So, welcome everyone to my backyard. I figured that for everyone who has not watched all of the episodes of the Dirt Journal, which is another series that I do here on the channel, where you might have caught some shots of the rocks in my yard, that we could just do a specific video. So this is a property that's half acre in total, 0.4 acres, less than a half acre. I've lived on it for, well, I guess we're going on 12 years now. Raised 3 girls here, 5-person family, and it was an undeveloped slope when I got here. So it was so steep, and being a gardener, I started stacking the rocks that were here in the soil. I started stacking the rocks that I collected anywhere I went, which, even when I moved to this property, I had a pretty fair supply already. And I need to mention that it might look excessive overall in this video, but remember, rockhounding is one of the things that I've done my whole life. Like I said, I was on this property for 12 years. It is cut into a serpentine hillside, a very steep hillside. We are a good long ways out here, and it's at the very confluence of 2 gorges with rivers in them that have eaten away massive loads of rock over the years. So I'm able to walk to the bottom of my hill here, and it's one of the most beautifully loaded up rivers or creeks that you could hope to live on, which is a public creek, and I advocate for public access to it. If any of you know me and know my area, you know that I built trails into the area, and I've actually come into some pretty stiff conflict face to face over my beliefs that the public should have right to these waterways, because in California it is part of our Constitution, and that Constitution was set up so that the public would not be landlocked out of it by private property owners. So where my children played sits about 10 feet away from a public creek where I would never chase anybody out of, where I believe it's every citizen's right to be able to walk up and down it and hunt for the very same rocks. So I practice what I preach. So, there's also public land directly across the creek from me that stretches for many, many miles, and yeah, so I have plenty of area. That's also what I did for a living the entire time that I've lived here. Was I was a landscaper. So even though you don't make great wages, one of the things that you do get as a benefit is definitely extra plants and rocks. So having a steep hillside like this, you can see I've had to incorporate rocks everywhere just to make flat areas. Literally from the back of my house, it's slanted down to the creek. And I was not somebody who was even a beginner at cold stacking. I had done rock stacking as a hobby in creeks, just for fun and pleasure, before I got to this property, but had usually had the luck of being able to do my gardening on flat ground. This particular situation is what forced me into starting to work with rocks, starting to learn how to stack my walls, having failures and successes, and that inevitably led to me working that into my landscaping career until basically that's what I've done for the last half of it, is work with more natural materials. I'm not afraid to use, you'll see just real plain stones, cement, everything else mixed in. Had to work with what I had, so I just incorporated it as I went along. If somebody had a bunch of blocks they were throwing out, I brought them home, made a wall, and tried to dress it out as best as I could. Any time on this property that you would go to dig for anything, you run into rocks. So just to make a spot, usually you get enough rock to line a path with. I love working with wood chips on my paths. So rock makes the most permanent type of permanent culture. As I went along, it became the motif. As I started working in other people's yards and I applied logs and wood, I realized that when I came back within 4 years, all wood had started to deteriorate. So rock is my inevitable go-to. You'll see in my yard that I do start with wood. I do use wood when I don't have rock. All throughout the property, on top of all the plain rocks, I've tried to bring home a large number of more semi-precious or just more beautiful stones and work them in places where I've been lucky enough to have my own quarries and stuff. I was able to pluck out perfect stones for the job. You can see in these spots I'm still using wood that will hopefully be replaced with stone when time and material allows. Again, there was nothing here when I started. This backyard was just fresh scraped from development, and the house, which is a modular house, had been set on its foundations 2 years before we moved in. This is ramps made from the stones. These are a good way to display your littler stones is set them in cement for later. All the girls' handprints. All the bird baths around here have their own little selection. Green stone for the fire pit. It's really nice to be able to see them revealed as the seasons go on and they get hidden and brought back, and you're working in your own yard and you find pieces of rock from a trip from 10 years before. Half of these stones gathered when me and 3 little girls were down playing in the gravel beds. Beautiful Kelseyville jasper. These are my outside collection stones I feel can stand the weathering and not be damaged. They're on plastic so the weeds don't grow through them, and I know where they are in case I ever have to scoop them all up and take them with me. There's the landscape stones. They'll probably remain for a very long time. Thank you for taking this little walkthrough with me. Maybe we can check out the front yard sometime. It's just about as crazy. I'll see you on the next one.